Today I'm at the wheel of a car which is possibly the most maligned vehicle you've ever seen. Yes, love it or hate it, today I'm taking a PT Cruiser for a drive. Hello, welcome to Furious Driving, and today for lunch we're having a Marmite sandwich. That is in something you either love or you hate. In this case it's the PT Cruiser, a car which is possibly the most derided in history. On the one hand, in 2001 Car and Driver awarded it their Car of the Year award. Back 2010 Top Gear announced it was the worst car in the last 20 years. So who was right? Let's find out. Now, back in the 1990s, the idea of retro-style cars, pastiche cars almost, became a very big thing. You got the Beetle, the Mini coming out in 2000, the Fiat 500, the Ford Thunderbird. All these things were absolutely massive, and the whole design influence was very strong. In fact, Chrysler did do a couple of very retro-inspired concept cars back in the 90s. There was the CCV, which was inspired by the 2CV, and there was the Pronto Cruiser. Yes, that was its real name, which was also designed by Brian Nesbitt, the guy who designed this car. Now, Chrysler have gone on record as saying this was inspired by cars of the 30s and 40s. If you go to New York, you'll see the Chrysler building, one of the most iconic Art Deco buildings on the planet. And so they were harking back to that golden age of car design in the pre-war years in America. In fact, looking at the face of the car, two of the vehicles I mentioned, the Chrysler and Chevy Airflow vehicles from the late 30s, are very much in evidence in the shape of the grille and the way the lights wrap around. But more so is the Chevy Advanced Design truck from 1947, which was a proper full-size truck. But you look at the bonnet, the hood, and the way it curves down into the grille. Wow, this is lifted directly in. You look at these front wings, and the Morris Minor clearly wasn't in the sphere of influence of American car designers, but this angle just here is pure Morris Minor. It's all 30s, 40s, 50s, trying to reclaim that Americana, that golden age. Now, people complain too much that cars all look the same, styling is boring, but then Chrysler go and do something like this, which has got all the elements of a 40s car. The problem is, it didn't necessarily go down very well. The trouble is, the very people who are saying that cars look too boring and too much the same weren't too keen on buying it. But they did sell quite a lot, over 1 million sold in America alone. And it is a very interesting shape. The almost separate fenders, the fact it's got the PT Cruiser name only written here on the door, not on the boot. And going down to the bottom of the doors, you have these faux sills, making it look a bit like a pre-war car. And unusually for a car of this era, it doesn't have body-coloured bumpers. These are plastic bumpers that are impact bumpers and nice and safe and deformable, as you would expect. But they are made to look separate, like on a 40s vehicle. This might have been one retro step too far though. A fully manual aerial just plonked in the wing. Really odd design. Now, around the back, it does again ape a pre-war vehicle, the way the back of the car swoops straight down right from the very high roof line. And getting in, pull the Chrysler badge again. Pure classic Americana design. And the boot is really big. And we've got a lot of practicality going on here. A lot of the people who bought these cars liked them because they had SUV practicality without actually being an SUV. Now, in here, first of all, we've got a very, very solid load space cover. Apparently this will take 100 pounds, and I don't know what that is in kilograms, but it sounds like a lot. This has got 3 positions. First of all, you can lift it up and take it out from the high position, pop it down here, oops, in the low position. And because it looks so strong, it's so thick and big beefy support brackets, you can put that 100-pound weight down here. So if you've got a medium-sized dog, that can sit above your groceries and your luggage if you want to go shopping. You can take it out completely, or you can fit it vertically if you want to use it as a load barrier to stop stuff coming into the cabin. And finally, check this out, not many cars have this option. I think I've maybe driven 2 others like this. We've got a picnic table, which sits down here, locate shelf leg here. This opens to 6 feet high, so if you're out and about somewhere, you can have, let me get a cup, possibly the greatest tea shelf of any car you've ever seen. This is the ideal car for picnicking and tea shelfery. Then you've got the back seats. These are a 65-35 split folding seat, and there are 26 different seating positions, including completely removing them. The rear seats are actually on rollers, so if you want to, you can lift them out really easily and have just basically a van, making the thing extremely practical. Also in the back here, we've got a power outlet, we've got side stowage for the jack, we've got side stowage for odds and sods, it's just really well thought out and really big. It's very tall as well. Well, it does get very narrow up at the top, so you need a spaniel with a small head. Now under the bonnet, there were 3 choices worldwide. In the US, there's a 2.4 litre petrol engine. There's a 2.2 litre Mercedes-derived 4-cylinder diesel, and the one we generally see over here in the UK is the 2 litre petrol. It's the same engine you found in the Chrysler Neon before it, and possibly during it, depending on what market you're in. It's 140 horsepower, 176 newton meters, and it means the car's good for 0 to 60 in 12 seconds and top speed of 110. There's not really a lot more to say about it until we get on the road. Now, getting into the car, we do have a slightly unusual proposition. It's nice, big, solid cast metal door handles, but rather than a pull and go, it's a push the button and pull the handle. Again, designed to look kind of old-fashioned. Now, here in Europe, we got 3 trim levels. Oops. Classic, Touring, and Limited. This is on the top of the range limited ones. In America, the range was quite extensive, going from the base model, actually called base, which was so basic. It really didn't have anything at all. No electric windows, no central locking, a cassette player. It was very crude indeed, up to ones like this, which are absolutely loaded. And the one I really wish we got over here, but we didn't, is the woody version with fake wood down the side. You know, I love it or hate the rest of the car. I'd probably buy it just for that alone, to be honest. I think in Japan they also got a Route 66 version as well, which was also quite well equipped and looked quite cool in yellow. This car needs strong colours. Yellow really suits it well. This one is called Inferno Red Metallic, which really sets it off. You need a strong colour on a car like this. Now let's look around the interior, because it's absolutely packed with stuff, but like American cars of this era, there's lots of toys, but we don't sometimes find the quality isn't quite there. It's not on European standards. Some things feel a bit, well, Fisher Price. Let's have a look around and see. We do have electric heated seats, high and low function, and electrically adjustable, as well as one big handle just to tip recline the back seat. Right, starting with the seats, because this is a top range car, we've got these mostly leather with Alcantara kind of stuff detailing in the fronts and the shoulders. The driver's one also has a fold down armrest as well, which is actually not leather topped. It looks leathery, but it's actually like a rubbery plastic material. Then we've got the door cards, which have big Alcantara stuff. I'm going to call it Alcantara. I'm not quite sure what it actually is. Feels like it though. Door card in the centre, then a textured outer area, and then a plastic further outer area with a big rubberised door pull in the centre, and a huge door bin in the main bit, which gives you lots of storage, but also these little aerated holes, which again kind of feel a bit retro in style. And one final odd piece is this little, I don't know what it is for. It's a textured plastic flat area which sits above the loudspeaker, but it's like a tiny tray in the door. Very unusual. And up at the top we've got this big giant Coke ring pull to get in and out the doors, and because it's an American car, we've got our first of our big chunky switches. Now looking at the dashboard, we have supreme T-shelfery in the front, so we've got great T-shelfery in the tailgate, and we've got great T-shelfery up in the front as well. The whole car is very tall and very upright. These seats have what's called a high H position, which is like the pivot point of your hips. So a lot of people who get into these cars find them very easy to climb into and out of, like a taller SUV, but without being such a tall vehicle as an SUV. And so the dashboard is very vertical. There's a great big cliff face of a car in front of you. We've got a nice recurring theme here of circles, and then we've got the body colour area here around the dials, and a body colour area here above the glove box. It is very reminiscent of pre-war cars, which often had this kind of style of dashboard with body colour painted metal panels. Obviously these are plastic, and there's an airbag behind this one. And this has the retro style font PT Cruiser written down there. There's a lot to like about this. I mean, if you like 30s and 40s stuff, then you can really see why it's a popular car. You've got to respect what they're doing, to quote Zane Lowe. Now, looking in the dials themselves, we've got 3 individual pod dials, which are with a slightly yellowy tinged base colour, making it look a bit nostalgic, if you like. But obviously it's a modern looking font, modern looking needles. And this car although it's a little bit grubby because it's been in storage, it's only just arrived here at Stone Cold. This is the mileage. This is how far this car has driven in its 21-ish years of life, which is nearly none at all. So on the left-hand side one, we've got our fuel and temperature. Center one is the speedo. Right-hand one is the rev counter. Then we have a little round air vent here on the side. We can pivot the centre bit for airflow, and looking slightly like an aftermarket air freshener, we've got a little control for on and off. Now moving back a little bit, we've got these very modern looking chunky controls for the lights, indicators, wipers, so forth, and cruise control. This is the limited. I know the low spec ones in America didn't come with cruise control, but I've got a feeling only the top end ones in the UK did as well. Then we have this steering wheel, which is leather rimmed, a little bit padded, and 4 spokes, and the 4 spokes are textured, rubberized, squishy material. And then we have, same as in the Beetle, I think we saw in the Beetle, there was a theme of little dimples and circles repeated all over the place. It seems to be a very 90s retro styling trope. Make something look old-fashioned or retro-ish, retro cool, by having little circular dimples all over the place. This has got an airbag in the wheel, and the wheel is height adjustable. And we've got a big, chunky switch here for the hazard lights. You'll notice the indicator telltale lights are up here in the body colour area. And this car is a manual. It has got the correct number of pedals down by your feet, and they're quite well spaced, lots of room around them. Moving into the centre, again, almost vertical, great big flat cliff face of a vehicle interior. We've got 2 more of these circly air vent things. Then we've got all 4 window switches and the lockout button here in the centre. This is where the design falls over, because these are clearly parts bin items. And if you've ever driven an American car and then compared it to European equivalent, they always have these massive, chunky, I'm going to say ugly switches, which we don't get in European cars. I don't know why Americans have these massive, horrible buttons in all of their vehicles. They are also up-down windows, which is cool, but the buttons are horrible. And then we move into a very, again, off-the-shelf part for the heating and ventilation controls. I'm not sure what they're out of, probably straight out of a Neon. And then this is, being the limited, it's a CD player. I'm trying to see if it's a multi-disc CD changer. It looks big enough to be, and it's got a cassette player in it as well, and FM AM, and it's got a built-in little tiny treble bass graphic equalizer. That's probably the most retro thing on the entire car. But that is a slightly odd shaped part that fits straight in the dashboard, so it's not quite doubled in, but it is absolutely everything's loaded in there. So if you wanted to change this out, it would look very strange. Then we've got a few more controls: heated rear window, rear wash wipe, leveling for the windows in a slightly weird position, traction control off, and a big power outlet. First of many, in fact. Moving down further, we've got a big cubby hole here under the centre. Then we have twin cup holders. This one's got a removable ashtray litter bin thing, and the second of our power outlets, which also has a blanking plate. So if you don't want the lighter to be floating around the car, you can take that out and put the outlet cover in there. Quite a good idea, actually. Moving back to what I'm going to say is probably coin holders, coin storage, which is popular probably in the, I'm guessing, the 50s or 60s. This is retro after all. A little bit pointless here. Then we've got what is quite a cool gear knob. It's like a cue ball round gear shift on a long chrome stalk. It's very hot roddy. And they were trying to evoke hot rod feelings as well, not just the 30s, 40s cars. They were also going for that nostalgia of 30s, 40s hot rods, which was obviously a very cool thing. However, back in the 90s, there came a bit of a hot rod fashion to add billet aluminium to stuff, and billet aluminium has not aged well. Physically, it's aged well. In terms of styling, it really hasn't. So yeah, that's sometimes transposed onto cars aftermarket. Then we've got another cup holder. This one's very deep. We've got a big storage area for stuff here, a pen holder here, big manual handbrake. We like a manual handbrake, not a stupid electric one. Another cup holder for the rear seats, more storage, and electric window switches here in the back. headroom is just madly good in here. It's really, really high. The seats, as well as being very upright, mean you're sitting almost like in a four-wheel drive. Because the roofline is just so tall, there's just masses and masses of headroom absolutely everywhere. Let's have a look in the back. Oh, and of course, being American, you have to push the button to take the key out and stop the dreadful binging. Okay, so looking around the car, it's much the same as it was in the front with the leather and Alcantara. Here we have the brochure for the car. This is from 20 odd years ago, Chrysler Jeep, where the car was bought. Look at these such a cool brochure. Silvery printed, actually silver ink on the page. And this is the page I love most of all. The PT Cruiser captures the spirit of the elegant 1930s, the Art Deco movement and the stunning steel-clad Chrysler building. The clean curve of the lights, the heritage of the winged badge, the refined door handles that exude class, and the subtle turns at the sills that suggest running boards. The purposeful wheels. Yeah, I'm going to stop at purposeful wheels because chrome wheels really don't go down well in the UK, or most of Europe. Now, these seats are comfortable. Again, masses of headroom. Because the seats are so upright, we've got good knee room and lots of good toe room as well, so you feel really quite open and airy in the back here. One little minor foible is these seat belts, which come in across the door aperture because of where they're mounted on this seat post. Not the best bit of placement, but you know, I'm sure they're fine. The seat backs are carpeted and net backed. It looks like they're going to fold into tables, but they don't. We've got nice big perforated door bins as well. This is basically the back of the car. Now this car, as I said, is very, very, very low mileage. It's been in a collection its entire life and barely used for anything. It still has these instruction tags on the back seat about how to use the folding seats. Never been removed. This is quite astonishing. Bit of a time warp, really. So, engine not too rough, not too smooth, sort of in between. I do find that cup holder already is a little bit in the way of the handbrake. And my first ever drive of a PT Cruiser. Well, 15 miles an hour, it's not too bad, I'll give it that. Let's get on the open road and see what we think. On the left-hand mirror, I have got that fantastic American warning. Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear because of litigation and stuff. American cars are littered with warnings and things that Europeans just find ridiculous. Now this car has barely been used. It's parked up in storage for most of its life, in fact all its life. Barely used for the last 20 odd years. Yeah, it's quite an early one. And the cars, I thought the cars came out in 2001, but in fact this car is registered as a 2000 car. So I guess I was wrong. So it still smells like leather and plastic. In fact, it still has all the new car smells that you could probably imagine a car having in 2001, having rolled off the showroom floor basically. But it is heavy on the plastic smells. The pedals are quite light, they're nicely spaced out, so you can, even with big boots on, you can get your feet around them. The gear change, again, very light, but it's kind of notchy and not that accurate. It's a little bit of a not great manual, if I'm honest. Steering also very, very light. And the car does roll a wee bit through the roundabout. You have to remember this is built on a Chrysler Neon platform, and the Chrysler Neon was not a car that was renowned for its astonishing handling capabilities. If you then make it about 50% taller, you're not going to certainly improve that situation. This is a 5-speed manual. There was an auto available as well. And it's one of the rare occasions I might say actually the auto might be more appropriate, but you lose that kind of hot rod lineage, hot rod heritage, the feel and attachment that you get to the pre-war cars if you go for the auto box in it. Visibility is not too bad. These A-pillars are a little bit close to your head and they are quite thick and chunky, but you've got good side visibility and you're looking down the bonnet, which disappears away quite rapidly. You do have that command driving position that you kind of get from SUVs and four-wheel drives, but you're not quite so bulky and big and imposing as you would be in an SUV. thought it was in third gear then. We're doing just over 50 miles an hour, 2,500 RPM. The engine is a little bit booming and it's not the most rapidly fast thing. So pulling away from a quick GoPro change, it's not the most brisk thing and it doesn't feel that great through the gearbox. But it's built on a car that didn't really drive that brilliant in the first place. And it's made it a bit more roly-poly, but it hasn't made it a worse car to drive. In terms of reliability, they were pretty good. Durability, though, was maybe an issue. I know in Japan, they have a Tokyo Disneyland or Disney World, and they had a fleet of these as taxis in the early noughties because they were kind of cool and fun and interesting. But they were all retired within 5 years because durability-wise, bits were starting to break off them. They don't lean too badly to the corners, but it's not a car you want to be hustling along rapidly. Now, Stone Cold Classics have just taken this car in, and it's been in a collection for a long time, so it's not even been cleaned yet. It's just straight out of someone's garage, basically. But that person did look after it for a long time. So I'm basically driving what is virtually a brand new Cruiser. If you'd like to buy this car, it will be for sale at Stone Cold in a couple of days' time. Now, this car was designed by a guy called Brian Nesbitt. Looking at the front, you might think he also did the Prowler, the Plymouth Prowler, but he didn't. That was someone else. What he did also design, though, was the Chevy HHR, which is more of a square van kind of a people carry MPV thing, which came out shortly after this when he jumped ship over to Chevrolet from Chrysler. As I mentioned at the beginning, he did have form, if you like, for coming up with retro-themed concepts prior to this. And Bob Lutz was well behind this particular project, the retro-styled thing. And it was a funny kind of idea. It appealed to certainly older buyers who remembered cars of the 30s and 40s being cars of their youth, perhaps. Maybe their first car was a very second-hand car from way back when. And it appealed to people who liked the easy ingress-egress, climbing in and out of the car with these high seats, because that made it easy to get in and out of. And because it's such vertical seating, you get tons of space inside. It's really practical. There are lots of reasons to like it, but the retro styling didn't necessarily go down with the younger buyers who they were hoping to entice in. Maybe they felt things like the Mini and the Fiat 500 and the Beetle were newer and cooler, and even though they were copying older cars, this car, which was a new car in itself, just for some reason didn't appeal. That said, they sold 1.3 million around the world. All of the American market cars were built in Mexico. Everything for the rest of the world was built down in Graz in Austria. Though they are identical in terms of componentry, I'm interested to know if the Austrian cars are better built than the Mexican cars. That would be something interesting to find out. Now, in 2002, the car actually achieved a 3-star NCAP, that's out of a possible 5, and they said that the side impact protection was very good, partly because the seats are so high up and the car is so tall. That meant side intrusion was good, but bad in terms of frontal impact, because there's lots of lower dashboard padding in the front of it, because in America seatbelt wearing was less common still, so they had to protect occupants passively with this kind of stuff. In Europe, obviously seatbelts are mandatory in every country, and the padding is negligible, so that was interesting. However, a year later in America, it was rated as good, but the other way around, saying poor for side impact but good for front impact. I guess they're assessing it based more on damage when you hit a solid object rather than damage when you hit an airbag. Weird, I don't know. So in terms of comfort and amenities, we've got lots of equipment. We've got air conditioning, we've got decent radio, we've got electric, pretty much everything. Remote central locking, obviously. And we've not got a sunroof in this particular car, but you could have done. You can tell it's American again. It's got the temperature in Fahrenheit. It's 60 degrees, which to me sounds like way too hot. Now, I like retro style stuff. I'm a massive fan of Art Deco styling. So from that point of view, I don't hate it. But in terms of buying a car on the merits of an actual car, it's kind of down there with, I don't know, a bad Astra. It's dynamically it's not brilliant. Fit and finish is okay, but it's not inspiring to drive. It's certainly not a car you get into and you think, wow, I really want to go a long way in this, and I want to explore as much as I can of its handling capabilities, because it hasn't really got any. The seats are very comfortable, the steering is in a good position, and the controls are exactly falling to hand where you'd want them to be. So ergonomically, it's a pretty good bet, really. So if you were just after basic transport, that was interesting. You couldn't really go wrong with it. But if you wanted a car that drove like a peak BMW, then you were going to be in for a disappointment. Does that make sense? So my conclusion is that, yes, it's a car of extremes. It's either loved and doted on by people who will just go all out crazy with the stick-on chrome stuff for no good reason, or absolutely hated and derided by pretty much everybody else. So it's an all or nothing car, and I'm going to say I'm somewhere in the middle. I quite like the styling. I respect the fact they've done something different and interesting. Got to respect what they're doing. But at the same time, it's not a car that makes you think, oh wow, I want to go and drive it. Which is perhaps where a car fails, because gearbox is really horrible. The steering is light and not a little bit vague. But if you're not fussed about that kind of thing, if you just want a car to get places and you want to do it in something interesting, you're not really going wrong with it, are you? It's probably not going to break down. So my conclusion is, it's okay if you're not really into cars. How does that sound, everybody? It may be, if it had driven more like the styling exercises actually looked, it would have gone down better, because the styling exercises made it look so exciting, so cool. But the actuality of the car were that it drove a bit boringly, and it's got big chunky American buttons, which no one outside America likes. Oops. 40 miles an hour does feel like about 80 though when you push it through a corner. It's not necessarily a good thing. So what do you think? Was the PT Cruiser actually a brave piece of design that deserved more credit? Or was it a ridiculous fantasy that should never have got off the concept drawing board? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you've liked this video, please do hit like and subscribe and bash that bell notification. See what comes out next time. Take care, everybody. I'll see you soon driving something completely different.